First Contact Follies. Commander Vexo Bri-I of the 7th Galactic Fleet stood before the ornate crystalline mirror in his private quarters aboard the flagship Luminous Ascension, adjusting his ceremonial cape with practiced precision. The embedded light crystals sparkled with each movement, casting dancing patterns across the polished walls. Today would be another routine first contact, or so he thought. Computer, display the preliminary report on species 7249, see again, he commanded. The holographic display materialized before him, showing grainy long-range footage of the primitive vessels they detected approaching the galactic community's territory. Species designation, human. Origin, Sol system, third planet. Technology level, pre-quantum civilization. Notable characteristics: carbon-based bipedal species, limited space exploration capabilities, primarily relies on chemical propulsion and physical construction methods. Bri-I's scales rippled with amusement. Another emerging species to guide into the galactic community, and eventually subjugate through technological superiority, though that part wasn't in the official diplomatic briefing. The Galactic Defense Council had perfected this routine over millennia. Commander, his communication crystal chimed. Ambassador Starweaver requests your presence in the diplomatic reception chamber. The human delegation has arrived. Inform the ambassador I'll be there shortly, he replied, giving his cape one final adjustment. Let's see what these primitives make of real civilization. The diplomatic reception chamber was a masterpiece of galactic engineering. Quantum crystal pillars stretched toward a ceiling that seemed to fade into infinity, while gravity-defying fountains of light danced through the air. It was specifically designed to awe lesser species, to remind them of their place in the cosmic hierarchy. What Bri-I didn't expect was to find the human delegation already engaged in an animated technical discussion with the ship's chief engineer. Fascinating approach to quantum field manipulation, a human female was saying, gesturing at one of the crystal pillars. Though I notice you're using a partial phase shift to maintain structural integrity. Have you considered a hybrid approach using physical support structures? Could reduce the energy requirements by at least 60%. Bri-I's scales flushed purple with indignation. How dare these primitives presume to critique galactic engineering? Ambassador Starweaver caught his eye and subtly shook her head, a clear warning not to make a scene. Captain Maria Torres, the human female, introduced herself, turning to face him. Earth Exploration Vessel Pioneer. Your hospitality is appreciated, Commander Bri-I. Welcome aboard the Luminous Ascension, he replied stiffly. We've prepared a series of demonstrations to acquaint you with galactic technology. Perhaps we should begin with basic quantum computing principles. Torres smiled, a gesture Bri-I would later learn to dread. Actually, Commander, we'd love to discuss your quantum shield harmonics. We noticed some interesting vulnerabilities while analyzing your scout ships. The room fell silent. Bri-I's secondary heart skipped a beat. Analyzing what scout ships? Oh, the ones that have been probing our system's defenses for the past 6 months, another human, Dr. James Chen according to his identification, replied casually. Clever design, really. Though the phase variance in the upper harmonics is quite exploitable. We've been meaning to discuss that with you. Ambassador Starweaver's diplomatic composure cracked slightly. I'm not sure what you mean. Our records show this is our first contact with your species. Officially, yes, Torres agreed. Unofficially, we've been studying your technology since your first cloaked ship entered our system. Did you really think we wouldn't notice? The gravitational distortions alone were like fireworks. Bri-I's scales were now cycling through various shades of purple and blue, a clear sign of distress in his species. These humans hadn't just detected their supposedly undetectable scout ships, they'd analyzed and found weaknesses in the Galactic Council's most advanced technology. Perhaps, Ambassador Starweaver interjected smoothly, we should discuss these matters in a more formal setting. The Council will want to hear of this directly. Of course, Torres replied with that unsettling smile. We've prepared a comprehensive report on potential security improvements for your systems. Consider it a gesture of good faith between future allies. As the human delegation was escorted to their quarters, Bry pulled Ambassador Ree aside. This is impossible, he hissed. They're barely out of their gravity well. They still use physical construction methods. They can't possibly understand our technology. Ree's expression was grave. Send a priority message to the Council. All of our assumptions about species 7249C appear to be catastrophically wrong. In his quarters that night, Bry reviewed the humans' security report. Each page filled him with growing horror. They hadn't just identified vulnerabilities, they'd developed countermeasures using nothing but their primitive materials and understanding of basic physics. A message from the Council flashed on his terminal: Humanity classified level 1 potential threat. Containment protocols authorized. Prepare for immediate action. Bry smiled, his confidence returning. Let them have their clever insights. Soon they would face the full might of the galaxy's most advanced civilization. No amount of primitive engineering could stand against that. If only he knew how wrong he was. In the coming weeks, as the Galactic Defense Council prepared its containment fleet, surveillance reports from Earth continued to puzzle analysts. The humans were building something massive, but the construction methods seemed absurdly primitive. Physical barriers. Concrete foundations. Metal frameworks. They must have detected our plans, General Stormwind declared during a strategy session. But this response is pathetic. They're trying to defend themselves with rocks and metal. Admiral Nightwhisper, who had remained unusually quiet during these meetings, finally spoke up. Has anyone considered that might be exactly what they want us to think? The question hung in the air, but was quickly dismissed. After all, what could a species that hadn't even mastered quantum engineering possibly do against the most advanced fleet in the galaxy? The answer, as they would soon discover, was quite a lot. Pride comes before the fall. The deployment of the Galactic Defense Council's containment fleet was meant to be a show of overwhelming force. 12 Dreadnought-class carriers, each representing the pinnacle of galactic engineering, emerged from quantum space at precisely calculated intervals around the human solar system. Their massive forms, gleaming with advanced alloys and crackling with barely contained energy, would have struck terror into any rational species. The humans, as Commander Vexo Bry was quickly learning, were not rational. Status report, he commanded from the bridge of the flagship Luminous Ascension. What are the humans doing? Sir, his sensor officer replied, antenna twitching in confusion, they appear to be continuing construction. The main viewscreen showed hundreds of human vessels moving between their asteroid belt and various points in space, hauling what appeared to be nothing more sophisticated than metal beams and concrete blocks. It was like watching insects build a hive, except these insects were doing it in space. How primitive, General Stormwind commented from his command post, his tentacles rippling with amusement. They think they can stop quantum weaponry with physical barriers. Admiral Nightwhisper, who had demanded to be present for this operation despite her earlier pessimism, studied the construction patterns with growing concern. Those aren't random placements, she said quietly. Look at the geometric precision. The spacing. The angles. It doesn't matter, Bry dismissed. Deploy the quantum containment grid. Let's show these humans what real technology can do. The containment fleet moved into position, their quantum generators powering up in perfect synchronization. Energy fields began to form between the ships, creating a web of interdimensional barriers that would completely isolate the human solar system. It was a feat of engineering that had taken 70,000 years to perfect. It lasted exactly 6 minutes and 23 seconds. Sir, the sensor officer's voice cracked with panic. Grid failure in sectors 7 through 12. Impossible, Bry snarled. What's causing it? I don't know, sir. The quantum fields are intact, but they're being redirected somehow. The main screen showed something that defied explanation. The humans had positioned what looked like simple mirror arrays throughout their defensive line. But these weren't ordinary mirrors. The surfaces were composed of precisely arranged crystalline structures that somehow interfered with the quantum fields, bending and redirecting them like light through a prism. How? General Stormwind demanded. Those are primitive materials. They can't possibly interact with quantum fields. A transmission cut through their confusion. Dr. James Chen's face appeared on the command screen, still wearing that infuriatingly primitive hard hat. Interesting approach to quantum containment, he said conversationally. Though you might want to adjust your field harmonics. They're creating some fascinating resonance patterns with our deflector arrays. This is impossible, Bri protested. Your species doesn't have quantum technology. Oh, we don't, Chen agreed cheerfully. That's what makes it fun. Did you know that certain crystalline structures, when arranged properly, can naturally interact with quantum fields? No power required. Just good old-fashioned materials science. We learned that from studying your scout ships. Admiral Nightwhisper's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with what Bri recognized as resigned amusement. They've been playing us from the start, she said. Everything we saw, everything we detected, they wanted us to see it. Reconfigure the quantum grid. General Stormwind ordered. Switch to frequency pattern Delta 9. The fleet complied, their quantum generators humming as they adjusted to a new configuration. For a moment, it seemed to work. The human deflectors appeared to lose their effect, and the containment grid began to stabilize. Then something even more impossible happened. Multiple objects detected, the sensor officer shouted. Thousands of them, launching from the human defensive line. Weapons? Bri demanded. No, sir. They're rocks. Simple asteroids, each precisely shaped and carefully aimed, streaked toward the fleet. But these weren't random chunks of space debris. Each one had been engineered with specific mass and velocity calculations, their trajectories forming an intricate pattern that forced the fleet to either maintain their positions for the containment grid or move to avoid collision. They couldn't do both. Breaks in the containment grid at all points, the sensor officer reported. The quantum field is collapsing. Chen's face reappeared on the screen. Newton's laws of motion, he said, as if giving a lecture. No quantum mechanics required. Just mass times acceleration squared. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The fleet scattered, their perfect formation broken by the simple need to avoid being hit by precisely calculated rocks. Without the formation, the containment grid collapsed completely. But the humans weren't done. As the fleet regrouped, they discovered that the asteroid field itself had changed. The humans had used their construction time to create a vast network of interconnected fortresses, each one designed to counter specific aspects of galactic technology. Analyzing their defenses, the tactical officer reported, his compound eyes showing visible distress. They're using our own shield harmonics against us. The crystalline structures in their barriers resonate with our quantum fields, creating feedback loops that. Speak plainly. Bri demanded. The more power we put into our weapons, the stronger their defenses become. They're using our own energy against us. Admiral Nightwhisper began to laugh. Do you understand now? She asked the stunned command staff. We thought they were primitive because they used physical materials. But they studied us, learned how our technology worked, and then designed the perfect counter using nothing but basic physics and materials science. But why? Bri asked, his scales cycling through confused colors. If they understood our technology, why not just copy it? Because this way is better, Chen's voice came through again. Your quantum technology is impressive, but it's predictable. Energy fields can be disrupted. Power sources can be targeted. But try disrupting 100 meters of reinforced concrete. Try targeting a power source that doesn't exist. Sometimes the simplest solution is the most elegant. As if to emphasize his point, another wave of carefully calculated asteroids emerged from the human defensive line, their trajectories forcing the fleet into increasingly disadvantageous positions. "We should retreat," Admiral Nightwhisper suggested. "Before they demonstrate any more of their primitive solutions." General Stormwind's tentacles writhed with indignation. Retreat? Before a pre-quantum civilization? Never. Prepare the temporal phase cannons. Let's see their rocks and mirrors handle. He never finished the sentence. At that moment, thousands of small, reflective objects deployed from the human fortresses, creating a complex geometric pattern in space. As the temporal phase cannons powered up, their energy was caught in the pattern, reflected and redirected in an endless loop until it dissipated harmlessly into space. "Fascinating design, isn't it?" Chen commented. "Inspired by your own quantum mirror technology, but using purely physical principles. No power needed, just precise geometry and basic optics. We call it the Hall of Mirrors Defense Grid." The command staff watched in stunned silence as their most advanced weapons were rendered useless by what amounted to cleverly arranged sheets of metal and crystal. "Full retreat," Bri finally ordered, his voice hollow. "Return to Council space immediately." As the fleet prepared to withdraw, one final transmission came through from the human defensive line. Captain Torres this time, still wearing her primitive hard hat. "Next time," she said with that now familiar smile, "why don't we skip the hostilities and start with diplomatic relations? We have some interesting ideas about improving galactic technology. Sometimes a fresh perspective is all you need." The fleet retreated, leaving behind a solar system defended not by advanced technology, but by the clever application of basic physics and simple materials. It was a humbling lesson about the dangers of underestimating a species simply because they chose a different path of development. But it was only the beginning. The humans had more surprises in store, and the galaxy would never be the same. Layers upon layers. The emergency session of the Galactic Defense Council was chaos. Representatives from 100 species filled the grand chamber, their voices rising in a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses. The defeat of their containment fleet had sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Commander Vexo Bri stood before them, his scales still showing traces of purple from the humiliation of retreat. Behind him, a holographic display showed the human defensive system in detail, or at least, what they understood of it. "As you can see," he gestured to the display, trying to keep his voice steady, "the humans have created what they call the Boundless Bastion. But it's not just a defensive line. It's something else entirely." Supreme Counselor Zenith leaned forward, her crystalline form catching the light. "Explain." Admiral Nightwhisper stepped forward, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with urgency. "What we initially saw, the physical barriers, the mirror arrays, the asteroid trajectories, that was just the surface. We've analyzed the data from our retreat and, well, perhaps it's better if I show you." The holographic display shifted, zooming in on what appeared to be a simple section of the human's defensive wall. As the image enhanced, layer after layer of engineering precision became visible. "The outer layer," Nightwhisper explained, "is composed of what they call metamaterials, engineered substances that interact with our quantum fields in ways we didn't think possible. But look here." The image peeled back like layers of an onion. "Each layer is designed to counter a specific aspect of our technology, but not through advanced systems. Through pure physics. The humans call it passive defense engineering," Controller Rex added, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "No power sources to target. No systems to hack. Just cleverly arranged matter that uses our own technology's principles against it." The council chamber erupted in fresh debate. A quantum phase specialist from the science division raised all four of their appendages in protest. But this violates our understanding of energy interaction. How can simple materials? Because we've been thinking about it wrong, a new voice cut through the chaos. Dr. Sarah Chen's hologram appeared in the center of the chamber, causing several council members to recoil in surprise. The human scientist was standing in what appeared to be a construction site, holographic blueprints floating around her. How did you access this channel? Bri demanded. This is a secure council frequency. Is it? Chen smiled. We've been listening to your secure communications since your first scout ship entered our system. But that's not important right now. What's important is that you understand what you're really looking at. She gestured, and the holographic display transformed. The defensive structure they'd been examining suddenly appeared as part of a vast, interconnected web that spanned the entire solar system. You see those simple metal struts? Chen pointed to what had seemed like basic structural supports. The spacing isn't random. Each one is positioned to create specific resonance patterns with your quantum fields. The more energy you pump in, the more they vibrate at frequencies that disrupt your weapons. The concrete barriers, she continued, laced with crystalline structures that absorb and redirect energy. The asteroid field isn't just obstacles, it's a giant gravitational lens. Even the dust particles we've scattered throughout the system serve a purpose. Everything works together in one giant, passive defensive matrix. The council chamber had fallen silent. Even the most skeptical members were beginning to understand the magnitude of what they were seeing. But why? Zenith asked. If you understand our technology so well, why not simply duplicate it? Because that's what you expected us to do, another voice joined in. Captain Torres appeared beside Chen, still wearing her trademark hard hat. You thought we'd try to catch up to your level of technology, so you prepared counters for that. Instead, we went in a different direction entirely. You see, Chen added, we realized something while studying your technology. You've become so reliant on quantum mechanics and energy manipulation that you've forgotten the power of simple physics. Every one of your advanced systems has a basic physical principle at its core. We just went back to those principles and built from there. The holographic display shifted again, showing the construction of their defensive systems. Humans in simple space suits welding massive metal plates. Concrete being poured into precisely shaped molds. Crystalline structures being grown in zero gravity. Look at your own quantum shields, Torres gestured. At their core, they work by manipulating spacetime to deflect energy and matter. We achieved the same thing with carefully calculated gravitational lensing from our repositioned asteroids. Your phase shift technology. We counter it with materials engineered to resonate at exactly the right frequencies to force dephasing. Each piece, Chen continued, is simple on its own. A mirror here, a concrete block there, a metal beam positioned just so. But together. She spread her arms, and the holographic display showed the entire solar system, now transformed into an interlocking defensive masterpiece. Together they create something far more powerful than the sum of their parts. Admiral Nightwhisper's bioluminescent patterns were pulsing rapidly. The precision required, the calculations, the understanding of physical principles, is far beyond what you thought us capable of. Torres finished. Yes, well, that was rather the point. While you were watching us stack rocks and pour concrete, you missed the fact that each placement, each angle, each material composition was precisely calculated to create this. The hologram zoomed out further, and the council members gasped. The entire human defensive system, when viewed as a whole, formed an intricate machine that used the basic forces of nature, gravity, electromagnetics, atomic interactions, to create effects that rivaled or exceeded their most advanced technology. We call it the physics engine, Chen said proudly. No power sources. No complex machinery. Just the fundamental forces of the universe, arranged in ways you never considered. And the best part? Torres added with that unsettling smile. This is just the defensive system we wanted you to see. Would you like to know what else we've built while you were underestimating us? The council chamber erupted in panic. Bri-Eye felt his scales cycling through every shade of distress his species was capable of displaying. The humans hadn't just outmaneuvered them technologically, they'd outthought them at every step. Perhaps, Zenith said carefully, her crystalline form vibrating with tension, it's time we discussed diplomatic relations. As equals. That's all we wanted from the start, Torres replied. Though I have to admit, building all this was rather fun. Humans do love a good engineering challenge. As the council scrambled to adjust to this new reality, Bri-Eye couldn't help but wonder what other surprises these primitive humans had in store. One thing was certain, the galaxy would never be the same. Echoes through the stars. The University of Advanced Galactic Studies had never seen such chaos in its 70,000-year history. The Grand Lecture Hall, usually reserved for quantum physics symposiums and temporal mechanics debates, was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from every major scientific institution in the galaxy had gathered to witness something unprecedented, a lecture on primitive technology. Dr. James Chen stood at the podium, still wearing his trademark hard hat, which had become something of a symbol across the galaxy. Behind him, holographic displays showed detailed breakdowns of human engineering principles. Commander Vexo Bri-Eye sat in the front row, his scales now permanently tinged with a subtle shade of purple, a lasting reminder of his humbling encounter with human ingenuity. But he wasn't here to brood. Like everyone else, he was here to learn. The fundamental mistake, Chen began, wasn't in your technology. It was in your thinking. You became so focused on manipulating energy and quantum states that you forgot about the power of matter itself. The holographic display showed a simple concrete block. Take this, Chen continued. You saw primitive construction material. We saw an opportunity to engineer matter at the molecular level. The crystalline structure of this concrete can be tuned to resonate with specific energy frequencies. No power required. No quantum manipulation needed. Just clever arrangement of atoms. A quantum mechanics professor from the Centauri Institute raised all three hands. But surely such passive systems can't match the power of active quantum technology. Chen smiled, that same smile that had haunted Bri-Eye's dreams since their first encounter. Let's test that theory. He pulled out what looked like a simple metal cube. This is a containment box made with our primitive technology. Would anyone care to try breaking it? The challenge caused a stir in the audience. Finally, a renowned weapons researcher from the Orion Collective stepped forward, carrying what appeared to be a miniature quantum disruptor. Please, Chen gestured. Give it your best shot. The researcher fired. The quantum beam struck the box, and vanished. No energy discharge, no dramatic effects. The beam simply ceased to exist. What happened? The researcher demanded. The box's molecular structure is arranged in a precise geometric pattern, Chen explained. When quantum energy hits it, the atoms naturally shift into configurations that channel that energy through a series of predetermined paths, eventually converting it into harmless thermal radiation. Again, no power needed. Just careful engineering of matter itself. The implications began to ripple through the audience. Centuries of technological development had been based on the assumption that more complex energy manipulation was the path forward. The humans had just demonstrated that going backwards, to the basics of matter and physics, might actually be the more advanced approach. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the effects of humanity's revelation were already being felt. On the industrial world of Nexus Prime, manufacturing centers that had specialized in quantum technology were retooling their facilities to study materials science. The prestigious Galactic Engineering Corps had created a new division dedicated to what they called passive technology development. But perhaps the most significant change was happening in the Galactic Defense Council itself. Admiral Nightwhisper, now promoted to Supreme Strategic Commander, stood before the Council, presenting a radical proposal. Our entire defensive doctrine needs to be reconsidered, she declared, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with intensity. The humans have demonstrated that our reliance on active technological systems has become a vulnerability. You're suggesting we abandon our quantum technology? One council member asked, aghast. No, Night Whisper replied. I'm suggesting we learn to combine approaches. The humans don't reject advanced technology, they understand it well enough to counter it with basic physics. That's the lesson we need to learn. The council chamber's holographic display showed footage from the failed containment attempt, but from a new perspective. Analysis overlays highlighted how each primitive human defense had been precisely calculated to exploit fundamental physical laws. Look at their asteroid field defense system, Night Whisper continued. They didn't just throw rocks at us. They calculated exact trajectories that forced our ships to either break formation or risk collision. They understood our quantum shield configurations so well that they could position simple reflective surfaces at exactly the right angles to create feedback loops in our energy fields. Commander Bry, watching from his observer's seat, felt a new emotion replacing his lingering embarrassment: respect. The humans hadn't just defeated their technology, they'd forced the entire galaxy to reconsider its approach to technological development. But the biggest surprise came 3 days later, when Captain Torres arrived at the council chamber with an unexpected proposal. We've been doing some thinking, she said, standing before the assembled council members. Your quantum technology, combined with our materials science, imagine the possibilities. The holographic display activated, showing designs that made even the most experienced council scientists gasp. Hybrid systems that combined quantum engineering with passive physical principles. Defensive systems that could adapt without power. Weapons that used both energy manipulation and fundamental physics in ways no one had considered. We're not here to replace your technology, Torres continued. We're here to help you remember what you forgot, that sometimes the old ways and the new ways can work together to create something greater than either alone. The implications were staggering. Already, joint research projects were being established. Human engineers were being invited to the most prestigious institutions in the galaxy. Species that had looked down on primitive physical technology were now racing to understand materials science and basic physics. But perhaps the most profound change was philosophical. The galaxy had been forced to confront its own technological arrogance. The assumption that more advanced necessarily meant more complex had been shattered. In his private quarters that evening, Bry reviewed the latest reports from across the galaxy. Shipyards were being retooled to incorporate human engineering principles. Defense systems were being redesigned to include both active and passive components. The galactic community's understanding of technology itself was evolving. A message from Admiral Night Whisper flashed on his screen: the humans are requesting volunteer observers for their next major engineering project. Interested? Bry found himself touching his hard hat. Yes, he'd gotten one of his own, and smiling. The galaxy was changing, and for once, he was eager to see what these primitive humans would think of next. After all, they'd already proven that sometimes the best way forward is to take a step back and remember the basics. Evolution. 5 years after the failed containment attempt, the Galactic Center was unrecognizable. Where once crystal spires of pure energy had dominated the skyline, new structures combined quantum engineering with physical architecture in ways that would have been unthinkable before humanity's influence. Commander Vexo Bry, now director of the Joint Human Galactic Engineering Initiative, stood at the window of his office in the newly constructed Physics Foundation building. The structure itself was a testament to the new philosophy sweeping the galaxy. Its quantum-enhanced foundation was anchored by precisely engineered metamaterials, while its upper levels utilized passive energy manipulation through carefully arranged crystalline structures. Quite a view, isn't it? Dr. Sarah Chen's voice came from behind him. She was no longer wearing her hard hat, at least, not all the time, but she still carried it as a reminder of where this all began. I never thought I'd see the day when we'd willingly replace quantum field generators with engineered materials, Bry admitted, his scales showing the soft blue of contentment. But the energy savings alone. That's just the beginning, Chen smiled, activating the room's holographic display. Wait until you see what the hybrid research teams have developed. The display showed projects from across the galaxy. On the industrial world of Nexus Prime, massive manufacturing centers now operated without power sources, using engineered materials that naturally channeled and redirected ambient energy. The prestigious Galactic Engineering Corps had developed new defensive systems that combined quantum shields with passive physical barriers, creating protections that were both more effective and more resilient than either approach alone. But the real breakthrough, Chen continued, is this. The hologram shifted to show something that made Bri-Eye's secondary heart skip a beat, a ship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Convergence, Chen announced proudly. The first vessel to fully integrate human materials science with galactic quantum technology. The ship was beautiful, but not in the traditional sense of galactic engineering. Instead of the usual sleek energy constructs, it featured physical structures that served multiple purposes. Hull plates engineered to naturally deflect energy attacks while simultaneously channeling power through their crystalline structure. Propulsion systems that used quantum fields in conjunction with gravity manipulation through mass distribution. We're calling it hybrid tech, a new voice joined in. Captain Torres, now Admiral Torres of the Joint Fleet, entered the office. But it's really just the natural evolution of both our approaches. The test results have exceeded all expectations, Chen added. The passive systems reduce power requirements by 90%, while the combination of physical and quantum defenses makes it virtually impregnable. But the really interesting part is what we discovered by accident. The hologram zoomed in on a section of the ship's hull. We found that when you combine certain engineered materials with quantum fields in specific configurations, you get effects that neither technology could achieve alone. New properties emerged that we're still trying to understand. Like what happened with the Archer project, Torres nodded. Bri-Eye remembered that one well. What had started as a simple attempt to improve energy weapon efficiency had led to the discovery that properly engineered physical projectiles, when enhanced by specific quantum fields, could achieve effects that defied conventional physics. The galaxy is changing faster than anyone expected, Chen observed, looking out at the cityscape. And not just technologically. She was right. The integration of human and galactic approaches had led to changes that went far beyond engineering. The galactic community's entire philosophy of advancement had shifted. The old assumption that newer automatically meant better had been replaced by a more nuanced understanding of technology and progress. The latest reports from the outer systems are promising, Torres added. Even species that initially resisted the new approach are starting to see the benefits. The quantum purists are down to just a few holdout worlds. Speaking of reports, Chen activated another hologram. The preliminary data from the Crucible project is in. The Crucible project was perhaps the most ambitious undertaking in galactic history, an attempt to create a new form of matter by combining engineered materials with quantum manipulation at the fundamental level. If it succeeded, it would represent the first truly new form of technology, neither human nor galactic, but something entirely different. The results are interesting, Chen said with characteristic understatement. We're seeing interactions that shouldn't be possible according to either our physics or yours. It's like we've stumbled onto a whole new branch of science. That's what happens when you stop assuming you know everything, Torres smiled. Sometimes the best discoveries come from admitting what you don't know. Bri-Eye's scales shifted to a thoughtful shade of blue-green. I still remember when we thought your species was primitive because you built things with physical materials. Now look at us, the most advanced civilization in known space, learning basic physics all over again. Not learning it again, Chen corrected. Learning it better. Understanding it more deeply. Your quantum technology wasn't wrong, it was just incomplete. Just like our physical engineering was incomplete. Together, we're finding the spaces in between, the possibilities we both missed. A notification chimed, the Joint Council was gathering for its monthly session. As they headed to the chamber, Bri reflected on how much had changed. The council chamber itself was different now, no longer a place of pure energy constructs, but a harmonious blend of physical and quantum architecture. Representatives from across the galaxy were arriving, some in traditional quantum-enhanced forms, others displaying the new hybrid tech adaptations. Humans sat among them as equals, their primitive, hard hats now symbols of respect rather than derision. "You know what the best part is?" Torres said as they took their seats. "This is just the beginning. Every day, we're finding new ways to combine our approaches, new possibilities we never imagined. The galaxy isn't just changing, it's evolving. And to think," Bri mused, "it all started because we made the mistake of underestimating a species that built things with rocks and metal." "No," Chen corrected with a smile. "It started because both our civilizations were willing to admit we had something to learn from each other. That's the real breakthrough, not the technology, but the wisdom to see past our own assumptions." As the council session began, Bri looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives, human and alien, quantum and physical, traditional and hybrid, and felt a profound sense of optimism. The galaxy had been transformed not by conquest or competition, but by the simple recognition that sometimes the best way forward is to remember where you came from. And somewhere out there, in the vast expanse of space, new possibilities were waiting to be discovered by civilizations wise enough to know that progress doesn't always mean complexity, and that sometimes the most advanced solution is the simplest one. The future was unwritten, but one thing was certain: it would be built together, with wisdom borrowed from the past and innovation drawn from the future, creating something greater than either civilization could have achieved alone. End of part.